I'm Adrian Kerr, and this is From the Top. I'm joined today by Coleman Buckley. Coleman, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Mate, good to talk to you again. What are you doing in Hawaii?
I'm living here right now. I've been based in Santa Cruz for the past 12 years or so, and then in August, California had this really bad run of wildfires. It's basically a lightning storm that just lit the whole state on fire, and the place that I was living was just downwind of where one of those lightning strikes was. So my house burned down, and basically it was kind of cool. I didn't have to pack, and just like it I kind of try to see it as a positive. So instead of being sad about everything that got lost, sort of seeing it as an opportunity to do something new, and not have to deal with the logistics that you normally have to for a big change. So yeah, I'm totally stoked. I'm really enjoying it here.
Mate, there is something nice about having a complete clean out. I don't know if a forest fire is the way to do it, but I remember when I've done some big getting rid of a whole lot of stuff, you do feel better.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean that really is true. There's been so many times where I've just sort of had these little moments of feeling grateful for, like, oh, like all those like weird socks that I like couldn't bring myself to throw away, but like never wore, like, gone. And so yeah, it's nice being light and just sort of having I'm 33, and sort of at this point in my life, getting to have like a kind of a clean slate and figure out, like, knowing what I know now, kind of how I want to set things up.
Cool. Coleman, well, let's get into it. Can you give us a bit of an overview of Ride Engine, where things started, and where the brand is positioned today?
Yeah, for sure. So I started Ride Engine. Um, Kind of had an ambiguous start because I didn't really mean to start it, but sometime around 2011, 2010. And basically, I'd graduated. I'd planned to go to medical school and got really into kite surfing. I'd kind of started a couple years before, but this one summer just got really into it. I started building my own harnesses, and messing around with different designs, just kind of on a not there. There wasn't any intention of starting a business. I just wanted something that was a little more comfortable. And over time, the design evolved, and it got pretty good. And um, like buddies in the parking lot and stuff, I started making gear for them, and then um, at the time, their harnesses weren't really much of a product category in kiting. So most pro riders didn't have any contracts specifying what harnesses they had to ride. It was just kind of a given that, like, whatever, like whatever brand they were sort of affiliated with, they would ride those, but it wasn't actually in writing. And so I started reaching out to all these pros on Facebook, Sam Light, Hadlow, Ian Aldridge, Patrick Rebstock, all of those guys, and just kind of like asking them if I send them a harness and they liked it more than what they had, if they could legally ride it. And got a bunch of momentum going that way. And then over over time, kind of had quite a business going, but also was having a tough time operating it, just because I didn't know what I was doing, and ended up teaming up with Slingshot. And since then, we've sort of, yeah, gotten a whole lot bigger and expanded the products. And I think now that the hard shell harnesses, which was kind of that that was my baby, they're about 70% of the market, and it's not all of Ride Engine, but that came up in a meeting the other day. That was our best guess, that 70% of new harnesses sold are hard shell harnesses.
Hmm. Mate, every good designer starts with a passion for the sports they do. Mate, what's a good day on the water for Coleman Buckley?
Um, I mean, I like everything. My favorites, big waves. Like I like being scared. Um, but I think, that only happens a couple times a year, and so I think in general, my favorite is just when I have the right tools for the right day. So I mean, if it's not huge waves, if it's a small day, but I have like the perfect foil, the perfect, just like whatever, it can even just be a longboard or a boogie board or whatever the thing is. But when the equipment really matches the environment,
Yeah.
and there's that synergy. That's my favorite feeling, just to feel like that, that I'm like perfectly evolved for the situation that I'm in with the gear that I have.
Mate, you mentioned hard shell harnesses there. You started building your own hard shell harnesses in your own workshop. Demand quickly outstripped your ability to make them. Take us through those early years, and how did you decide who got some of the early harnesses that you made?
Well, I mean, the yeah. So I was building each one myself, and it was quite a project to build them. I think it probably took me all in all probably like 8 hours or so. And then if there was a lot of back and forth in emails and stuff, that could take longer. Um, but yeah, I mean, at the time I was pretty broke, so I wasn't turning anybody down. I was building all the ones that I could, but it just kept the demand was just outpacing what I could deal with. And I think a big part of it too is I just didn't know like what the operations of a healthy business were supposed to look like. So it's they always whether you're trying to do a trick or anything, like visualization is important. And I like didn't have the visualization of like the operate like I had the vision for the product, but the actual operations of the company and how just pretty much how everything worked, whether you're talking about finances or distribution or anything. I like it just wasn't the part that I really cared about, and so it always kind of got neglected. I was just all about the design, and so yeah, that part was just always kind of limping along behind the design of the products, which is why the merger was so helpful. Was that all of a sudden there was I that part sort of was able to catch up to the design and everything sort of don't know the word that I want, but
Yeah, sure.
it is all yeah, the operations matched the quality
Yeah.
of the product.
Mate, are there any of those harnesses still about or even being used? Do you see them around, the original ones?
Yeah, yeah, they're around. I get hit up a lot of times asking for people that they've been using them for 8 years and something finally broke and they want them to get fixed. I if anyone's watching this and about to do that, I don't want to fix your harness, but I'm happy to tell you how to do it. I mean, that's the thing. They're always you can always fix them up and get them going again. Yeah, but also salt water is a killer. So
Sure.
after a decade, they start wearing out. I'm sorry, but yeah, they're still in circulation. The big thing with the original ones was all the hardback shell was custom molded to people's backs, and I think that the performance you get when the shell is custom fit to the curve of your spine is really good. And that's something we've been working on for a while, trying to figure out how to have at production scale, but it's really difficult to do. So I'm sure it'll show up one day, but right now that's kind of the holy grail for us, is to figure out how to bring those back.
Mm. Mate, you've been working with Seven Nation for about 7 years now. What benefits does it bring Ride Engine to have a partner like Seven Nation?
I mean, it makes all the difference in the world. They're really they're so, they're such a talented team. They're so good at what they do. Um, and there's just so many parts of a business that really matter that I just don't have a background in. So whether it's logistics of how to get stuff around the world on time, or forecasting and figuring out what the market's going to want so that your inventory actually matches demand, or um, just the scale. The bigger you are, the better pricing you can get when you're just manufacturing things. And even just like if you're going to a factory and you're big, the factory really wants to help you, whereas if you're little, they're prioritizing how much
Sure.
they help you develop a product based on how many units you're going to ask them to build for you. So just yeah, having the scale and the knowledge and the experience that everyone at Seven Nation has is yeah, that is so helpful. Can't describe it.
Mate, Seven Nation seems to be in a real growth phase at the moment. How's the vibe there? I guess with this growth brings new faces and a lot of excitement.
Yeah, I mean we're really stoked. It's like there's kind of every company kind of has its ups and its downs, but right now it really feels like we're everything's speeding up and there's a lot of optimism. I think one big indicator was over COVID. A lot of businesses really suffered and decline, and then like sort of these brands that for me were always like sort of like the big dogs that I was like kind of trying to like find a little niche around them, all of a sudden, like, they basically collapsed. And we had one of our best years ever. I think it's like close to like 200% of what we did the year before. And so just being like, oh wow, like, all right, this year, like, we just surged ahead, and all these other established companies just cratered. You can't help but feel optimistic that, like, you know something's working. And so we have a bunch of new personnel that, like, it's talent that's really cool to work with and super knowledgeable, and a bunch of products we're excited about, and lots of stuff coming down the pipe that I think is going to do well. So yeah, feeling really good about the future.
Mate, Right Engine started out making kite harnesses, but now produces boards, foils, wetsuits, and plenty more. Was it always your intention to expand the product range, or did that just happen naturally?
Yeah. Well, I mean, uh, starting at the beginning, there wasn't even the intention to start a business. It, like, so, there was just trying to make something that functioned really beautifully. Um, but then I think when Seven Nation wanted to team up, expanding the product categories was part of their plan, because I think, they were looking at the return on their investment, and sort of were like, harnesses are great, but it's a small category of a small sport. So, like, for this to justify the amount of resources and personnel that are behind it, we need to have a bigger offering. But I'm really happy about it, because I mean, it's a lot more fun to have such a broad array of things we make. And I mean, a lot of my friends that are designers for sort of more traditional company, like whatever, Apple or Peloton or something, they spend their whole year working on like one little piece of one thing. And for us, we have so many products, and there's not a lot of people that are behind the scenes. That it can be like one day to the next, we're designing a whole product start to finish, and it, like, we'll keep coming back and touching on it as we get prototypes and keep developing it. So we're not being like quick and sloppy or anything, but it's just cool to be able to work on so many different products over the course of a given year. I feel like that's pretty rare in the design world.
We understand that creating the Unity spreader bar was a long-term goal for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that bar and how it was created?
Yeah. I mean, like, the sort of the fundamental thing I was trying to fix is just the way that harnesses always ride up. The bar is always kind of spinning and coming up. And so the original idea that I had was, on like metal watch bands, there's like those flat links that kind of link together.
Yep.
I started out building harnesses that actually had a chain kind of like that. And so the whole belt was actually a bunch of metal links that went together with screws. And those things, they looked pretty cool. They looked kind of like a very like Blade Runner type thing. But the first, they were pretty tough to build, and also that it just wasn't the optimal design for a number of reasons. But worked with Julian a lot. Also, I mean, there's like, anytime that I name anybody's name, there's a lot of people that worked on it. But Julian Fillion, especially, and Bobby, our mechanical engineer, and Alex, who's an industrial designer. We basically kind of started taking a lot of cues from the way that snowboard bindings work. And the mechanisms are actually totally different. If you ever tried to load a snowboard binding, which was like the first thing we did, they just like, they explode. Because the snowboard bindings, there's like a little tooth that comes down, and there's a spring that tensions it. And so if you pull too hard, it overpowers the spring and it pops open. So most people are like, oh, you just took a snowboard binding and put it on. It's like, no, like, if you did that, you'd get, it would explode as soon as you powered up your kite. So mechanically, everything's pretty novel, but the inspiration for the ease of use was kind of around snowboard bindings. And yeah, it seems like it works really well, because I mean, basically what happens now is there's like, it complements the hard shell so well, because it's a full exoskeleton of sort of structural stuff, and then sort of goes into to the padding and the belt and everything. But yeah, I mean, I was working on that thing for like probably 4 years, which is like a pretty long time. And I mean, the early ones, like I said, looked totally different, but just the concept of having the shell be locked into your back and the bar be locked in, and nothing can wiggle. Also, on that point, PSA, everyone uses spreader bars that are too short. If the longer you make your spreader bar, the shorter the distances between the hard shell and the bar, that eliminates how much the harness can shift around. So I think a lot of people, for some reason, um, I don't, people are just always on very short spreader bars, in my opinion. So if you can use a longer one, I would suggest it. I think you'll find everything is just more comfortable.
I mean, one thing I hear about you is that you're a real tinkerer. How do you balance your love of being in the workshop with the day-to-day running of the business?
That's the lucky thing is I don't have to. I'm I'm not so good at running the business, and I think acknowledge that. And so that everyone that's running the business is they're really good at doing that, and I'm super lucky that I don't have to think about that. So that I'm sort of given the freedom to just fall down rabbit holes and just chase ideas. And one thing that's really helpful is Gary Siskar, who I mentioned before, the brand manager, and Julian are both they both really span the design world and the business world. And I feel like they're almost my like liaison with the business world. So I'll start chasing an idea and kind of check in with them, just be like, hey, like I don't really know how I'm going to get there, but I'm trying to build this thing that meets to that need. Like if I figure it out, is there going to be room for like, is there going to be demand? Are we going to be able to? Is this going to fit in the forecasting? Like, because that way I don't waste time working on things that are totally not needed, but at the same time I can sort of let go of the regular business constraints and just be as creative as I can.
Yeah, you've got a great team around you. You mentioned Julian Fillion and Director of Marketing, Gary Siska. In regards to the structure of the company, is there a clear definition on who has what roles and responsibilities, or is it a real collaborative and team effort at Right Engine?
Or it's definitely it's very collaborative. I mean, just hats off to Gary and Julian because like on paper they're basically responsible for everything. Um, I mean, they both work so hard, and yeah, it's definitely it's very collaborative. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that are making sure that everything happens. And a big thing too is we've been trying to refine just the internal processes of the company to try to just because there's so many products and they're the type of products where things can go wrong all the time, just because they're technical hard goods, which is sort of it's the hardest category of things to build most of the time. And so a lot more sort of just internal checks and balances to make sure that deadlines are getting hit and the development budgets are not being overrun and things like that. So that's kind of come from, I guess, more sort of the operations part of the company, putting a little like initially I was a little like, like, why are you guys telling me what to do? But then pretty quickly it's like, oh, this actually helps. So like, for example, if if I have an idea for something, I have to talk to the marketing people first and like figure out that like how many we're going to sell if it works and how much money I have to develop it. And then that way, like they know what I'm working on. I know what they need me to deliver. And there's just more communication. So just make like, yeah, I think just making sure that everyone's on the same page has been and like sort of making formal guidelines for how everyone is supposed to stay on the same page has been really helpful.
Mate, you have a degree in biology from Stanford University. Has there been any instances where your knowledge has been used or applied in your creations at Right Engine?
Yeah, I mean, it's the information is always good. I've used, I guess, like some anatomy stuff, like which was helpful, but more so, I mean, if you're getting a bio degree, you have to do a lot of chemistry and physics, and those help. I mean, the physics pretty obviously because there's a lot of just mechanical stuff going on. So that was really helpful, and then the chemistry stuff has been surprisingly helpful too because a lot of the characteristics of different materials and things, being able to understand, even just in general terms, like on a chemical level, why they are that way. Whether you're trying to the structural properties of something or trying to figure out what glue would work, you kind of know, like, oh, like, this thing has amine bonds, and that will, that'll connect to that way, but this is UV unstable, and like knowing that kind of stuff is kind of nice. You can definitely I can get away without knowing it, but it I feel like it's been pretty helpful. And then yeah, I don't know. I mean, like also just like I mean, again, you don't need a bio degree for it, but but like biomimicry is kind of trying to design things based on what you see in nature, and I feel like that's like there's so many brilliant things that are just like kind of hidden in plain sight, and the bio degree is kind of a nice way to be able to notice that kind of stuff more. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I feel like what I use most is like I like had some sewing classes in fourth grade. I use those a lot. Like,
I wish I could sew. Believe me, I thought about that. Hey, Coleman, how often do you get up to Hood River these days since you're based in Hawaii?
yeah. This year is like, I mean, I would say like normally I'm going up to Hood River probably 2 or 3 times a year. This year, just because everything was locked down, there was no travel. And then right now I'm kind of trying to figure out what, I mean, there's a big trade show in August. I plan on going back to that, and I have a ton of friends there, and it's just a really fun scene. So I definitely like to go back, but it's right now too. I'm on Kauai, and the travel here is pretty restricted, and so leaving is not really worth the hassle of having to get back. But so basically, the answer is right now, almost not at all. But in the future, probably a couple times a year.
Coleman.
But yeah, I like really don't know. Like, I feel like I don't have enough information to plan more than like 6. I mean, business wise, we have a plan, but in terms of my personal life, I'm just kind of taking things as they come.
Awesome. Well, Coleman, thank you very much, mate. That was really, really cool.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.